Want scary stories? Listen.
Part 1. Before we moved in. There are things you only understand later. Later, when it is already too late to change anything. Later, when you are standing barefoot on freezing asphalt at 3 in the morning, staring at the dark windows of the house you just ran out of. And you realize something terrifying. You cannot go back, not for your car keys, not for your phone, not even for your shoes. Because there is something inside, and it knows your name. My name is Emily Carter. I am 28 years old. I work as a graphic designer. I live in Columbus. I have a cat. A small apartment, crooked shelves. I never managed to fix. I am a normal person. I do not believe in ghosts. Or at least I did not. Until that October. This happened to me and my brother Daniel. He is 25. A programmer, a skeptic. The kind of person who explains everything with logic. The kind of person who laughs at fear. At least he used to, before that house. The house was in a quiet suburb southwest of Cleveland, wide streets, old maple trees. In summer, it probably looked peaceful. But we arrived at the end of October. The trees were bare, black, twisted branches against a gray sky, like cracks in porcelain. Like the sky itself had been broken. The house was built in the 50s. 2 stories. Wood siding. Once white, now. The color of old milk, the porch sagged slightly. The windows were tall and narrow. They looked like eyes that had not slept for days. There was a bush in front of the house, dead broken branches. The wind moved it. Its shadow slid across the wall like a hand. Like the house was waving at us, I stepped out of the car and felt the air not just cold, heavy, wet, wrong. It smelled like old wood, rotting leaves. And something else. Something stale, like a room that had not been opened in years. Daniel pulled out the boxes and smiled. Great place, cheap, quiet. I nodded. We did not ask questions. We should have. The house was too cheap. The owner spoke too fast. He would not look us in the eyes. There were no photos of the inside. We saw all of it. And we ignored all of it. That is how horror stories begin. Not with something behind the door, but with small warnings. You choose not to see. Part 2. The first days. Inside the house was bigger than it looked. High ceilings, dark wooden floors. They creaked under every step. The living room walls were covered in old wooden panels. Once cream-colored, now the color of old bone. The fireplace did not work. Bricked up on the shelf above it were things left behind. A candle holder, a small porcelain horse with a broken ear, and something else. A small round mirror turned toward the wall. Daniel picked it up and laughed. I look fine for a move. I took the mirror and turned it back, facing the wall. I do not know why. It just felt right. The kitchen was at the back, larger window looking out into an overgrown yard. Bare bushes, a broken fence beyond it. A small forest. The trees stood so close together, even without leaves. You could not see through them, just a darkness, thick, still. I caught myself staring, waiting for something to move. Nothing moved. Not yet. The hallway upstairs was long and narrow doors. On both sides, 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and 1 more door at the very end, locked. We asked the owner. He said it was a storage room. No key, do not open it. He said it casually, like it meant nothing. We forgot about it. For a few days. The first nights were quiet. Almost. The house creaked constantly, soft, slow. Like it was breathing, pipes knocked. Something moved inside the walls. Mice, we told ourselves. Old house, we told ourselves. It is normal. But there was one thing. Temperature. The hallway upstairs was always colder. Not just cooler, cold. Like a window was open, but everything was closed. I told myself it was insulation Draft's old house. It made sense. But every time I walked through that hallway, the air changed, like crossing an invisible line, like stepping into someone else's space, a space where you are not welcome. Part 3, the fourth night. It started on the fourth night, around 3 a.m, 3:07. I remember that time. I would remember it every night after. At first, I did not know what woke me. I just opened my eyes and listened. The room was quiet. Daniel was in the next room. I could hear him turning in his bed. The house carried sound like an amplifier. And then I heard it, something in the hallway. Not a knock, not a scratch. Something in between, like something heavy, being dragged slowly across the floor. Quiet, low, but clear, too clear. This was not pipes. This was not mice. This was something big. I sat up, the blanket slipped off, cold hit immediately. The kind of cold from the hallway. It had reached under the door. My feet went numb. I listened. The sound was slow, measured, deliberate. Like something moving without any hurry, like it had all the time in the world. "Daniel," I whispered. No answer. "Daniel," I said louder. The sound stopped. Complete silence. The kind where you hear your own heartbeat. I counted at 1, 2, 3, and stared at the darkness under the door. Nothing. A minute passed. Then another. I almost laid back down. And then the shadow changed, just slightly, like something large was standing right outside, blocking what little light came through. I did not breathe. Then it was gone. Silence again. Morning came. I stepped into the hallway. The chair near the stairs had moved. The sweater I left on it was on the floor. The chair was turned, facing the hallway, like someone had been sitting there, watching our doors. I asked Daniel. He said maybe one of us bumped it. We both knew that was not true. Part 4, a week of small things. The next few days were different, not fear, not panic, something worse. A slow realization that something was wrong, small details that did not make sense but kept adding up like water filling a basement, slowly, quietly, until it is too much. The closet in my room, I closed it every night, firmly with a click. Every morning. It was open every time I started placing a chair in front of it. The chair stayed. The closet still opened. I did not understand how. And still I kept finding explanations. The hinges. The house settling. Anything. The kitchen things moved. A cup I left on the right side was now on the left. Knives in the block, not all of them, just one, always a different one, always turned toward the window. Salt and pepper, switching places. Again and again. Daniel noticed his own things. His laptop, every morning, turned toward the door. Even though he always faced it toward the window. The charger unraveled on the floor. One time, his notebook was open on a blank page. We did not talk about it, because if you say it out loud, it becomes real. The footsteps became regular. Every night around 3. Someone walked in the hallway, slow, heavy, with pauses. Not like someone going somewhere. Like someone just walking back and forth, like waiting, like measuring the space. On the 6th night, I was lying in bed, listening, and I realized something. The footsteps always stopped in the same place, right in front of the locked door. At the end of the hallway, that is where they stopped. And that silence was worse than any sound I told Daniel in the morning. He listened. Quiet, then said, "We need to open that door." The owner said not to. I answered, I know Daniel said. We did not open it. Not yet. Part 5. The glass, it happened on the 8th day. During the day, I want to be clear about that, because people expect fear at night. In darkness, when imagination takes over, when every shadow becomes something. At night, you can convince yourself of anything. But this was different. It was 2 in the afternoon. Cold November sunlight came through the kitchen window, pale. But still sunlight. Daniel and I were sitting at the table. I was drinking tea. He was scrolling through his phone. We were talking about normal things. Work groceries. Nothing important. And then Daniel stopped mid-sentence. I looked at him. He was staring at the table. I followed his glad. The glass was moving, slowly, very slowly. No shaking, no vibration, just sliding. Across the table toward us, we both saw it. Neither of us spoke. I could hear my breathing, and the quiet sound of glass against wood. It reached the edge and fell. It shattered. And in that moment, while the pieces were still rolling across the floor, I felt it. Something changed. The air. It shifted like someone had just entered the room and stood between us. Invisible, huge, watching. Just watching. Daniel stood up so fast his chair fell back. We left the kitchen and we did not go back that day. That evening, when it got dark and we were starving, I forced myself to go in. I turned on the light without stepping inside. I reached in, grabbed the first thing I could find, a pack of crackers. And as I was leaving, I looked at the window, just for a second. In the glass, there was something not outside. A reflection, someone standing behind me. I turned around instantly. Nothing. No one. I did not check again. I turned off the light, walked out, and closed the door. That night, we stayed in the living room. All the lights on. The TV loud. We barely spoke. We just sat there side by side, pretending to watch something. Neither of us could follow. Around 2 a.m, Daniel said, "Tomorrow we leave." I said, "Yes, but we did not leave." Because in the morning, everything felt different again. Sunlight, coffee, the sound of the floor. Normal. We convinced ourselves. One more time. For the last time. Part 6. That night. It happened 2 days later. On the 10th night, we were in the living room again. The TV was on some old movie. It did not matter. The lamps were on. Everything was normal, or at least it looked normal. But we both felt it, that pressure. It always came in the evening, like something building, like air before a storm. At some point I realized something. The TV had been silent for a while. I looked at the screen. It was glowing. A pale blue light, no picture, no sound, not paused, not off, just empty. I picked up the remote, pressed a button. Nothing pressed again. Still nothing. "Daniel," I said. He looked at the screen, then at me. And then the air changed. I felt it instantly, like the temperature dropped, 10 degrees in a second, like someone had opened a freezer. The hairs on my arms stood up. Not from the cold, from something else. And then from the hallway behind us, a loud odor, sharp, heavy, like something massive thrown against the wall. We both jumped to our feet. Silence. Then, 3 knocks. Slow, even. Boom, boom, boom. Not like knocking on a door, like something hitting the wall. From the inside. From the hallway. From the darkness, Daniel grabbed his phone. Turned on the flashlight. I grabbed his arm. We stood there looking into the hallway. It was dark, cold. We could see our breath. The knocks came again. Closer. Boom, boom, boom. Not at the end anymore. In the middle, right by the stairs. "Do not go there." I whispered. He did not move. We just stood there. The light from his phone reached halfway and stopped, like the darkness swallowed it. And then I saw it. A shadow on the wall. Too tall, too still. It was not moving. Just standing there, Daniel did not see it. The light was pointed straight. The shadow was to the side. Only I could see it. I stared at it. It did not move. Not even slightly. No sound. Nothing. And then slowly, very slowly, it turned toward me. I could not speak. I could not move. I just stood there, watching, as something without a body, without a source, without any explanation, stood in our hallway and looked back at me. Daniel said, "Did you hear that?" The knocking came again. Closer now, right behind the wall. Step, hit, slow, deliberate. Getting closer to the door. The TV suddenly turned on. The screen flashed. Not a movie, just static. White noise loud. Too loud. We both flinched. And then it shut off completely. Click, total darkness, all the lamps. At the same time, gone. We were standing in complete darkness, only the phone light, only our breathing, and that feeling, that unbearable feeling that we were not alone. Something was in the room. Close, very close, I knew it. The same way you know someone is standing next to you, even if you cannot see them. Something ancient. Part 7. After the next day. In daylight, with a cup of coffee in my hands and safe walls around me. I called the owner. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything, every detail. He listened silently for a long time. And then he said something I did not expect. "You are not the first." His voice was not scared, not surprised, just tired, like someone repeating the same thing over and over again. He told me about the previous tenants, a young couple. They lasted 3 weeks. They left in the middle of the night, just like us, without their things. Before them. An old man, he stayed less than a week. After that, he refused to talk about the house at all, and before that, a family with children. The kids stopped sleeping. They started talking to someone in the hallway, someone no one else could see. One of them, a boy about 8 years old, once told his mother. The man at the end of the hallway asked him to be quiet. They left the next day. I asked about the locked door. There was a pause. Then he said, "An old man used to live there. The owner before me. He died inside that room. They found him weeks later. He spent his last years almost entirely in there. The door was always locked. When I bought the house, they told me the key was lost. I asked him, 'Why do you still rent it out?' Another pause. I tried to sell it. No one would buy. Real estate agents refused to list it. I hired people. They walked in and then refused to come back. They said, 'Something feels wrong inside.' I never stayed there overnight, not even once." Silence. Then he added, "I thought maybe it would not bother someone. You seem like normal people." "I'm sorry," he hung up. We never found out the old man's name. We never found out what was behind that locked door. We never found out what was in that house, or if it had ever been human. But I still think about that shadow, the way it turned toward me. And sometimes, very rarely, around 3 a.m, I wake up, I lie there in the dark, and I listen because I remember that sound. Slow, heavy, patient. And I cannot make myself stop listening. So far, there is nothing. So far, if something moves in your house at night, do not ignore it, because sometimes it hears you too, and it is waiting for you to stop listening. If you watched until the end, write in the comments, would you open that door and subscribe? There are more stories like this, and not all of them end with someone getting out.